Hey everyone! So this is my very first YouTube live stream. I'm starting a few minutes early. Hope everything's working. So I am going to get started here in a minute. So hopefully you can see the live chat here on the YouTube live stream and you can ask questions there. I've got Matt sitting here off camera to my right who's going to be looking at questions and asking me questions. So beyond that, I feel a little bit bad that we're starting this early, but I guess people can just join in as we get going. So as many of you know, I am going to Antarctica and I am going on Saturday. So it's coming up really soon. But it's actually been a really long journey for me to get to go to Antarctica. It's been 5 years of me trying to accomplish this goal and now it's actually here. So what I'm actually going to be doing in Antarctica is really exciting, at least to me. It's very nerdy. So let's see, when I go to Antarctica, I'm going to be there, if all works out, for 33 days. So I will be there for a decent amount of time, and that all depends on weather. So what I'll actually be doing while I'm in Antarctica is going to approximately 4 different locations. I will be going to Blood Falls, which if you Google for Blood Falls, it's a really cool location. You get to see this really bright red stream of stuff coming out from a glacier. And essentially that red stuff is iron oxide. And it's a really unusual and highly protected area in Antarctica. Also, if the weather holds up, I'll be going to Lake Hoare, which is a place that is next to the Canada Glacier. And I'll actually be hiking on a glacier and looking for a lot of interesting little microbial creepy crawlies in the ice there. I'll also be working with a dive team, and this dive team that I'm working with is going to be diving into -4 degrees Celsius water, which is just really bananas to think about actually them doing that. But they will be getting samples for me from the water column and also from the seafloor sediment as well. And then beyond that, I'll be working with a team that's going off to the sea ice edge and trying to look for different things that are occurring sort of at that interesting edge interface. Hopefully I'll also be learning how to drive snowmobiles and things of that nature. So it's a pretty jam-packed trip, even though I'll be there for 33 days, it'll be a lot. And again, all of that depends on weather. So there's been the biggest delay ever for deploying to Antarctica. They were delayed by 3 weeks due to snowstorms and bad weather that kept them from actually being able to land in Antarctica. So what my journey is going to look like is that on Saturday, I'm going to be flying to Christchurch in New Zealand and then be there for a couple of days, getting all of my gear from a quartermaster and then departing, if the weather is good, to Antarctica on a C-17 Army plane. Which looks kind of hardcore if you've ever seen one of those. So anyway, I don't want to drone on. I actually want to get to all of your questions. So feel free to type into the live chat right now, or also we've got some questions that have come in over the last few days that Matt will be throwing to me, and we'll just get started.
So how did they make you prepare physically for going?
Yeah, so the physical qualifications for going to Antarctica are quite, for me, they were kind of intense. So you have to have a full physical. And as part of going to Antarctica, in addition to this physical, they make you take an EKG. So I took my very first EKG, which was kind of awkward. But they also do a full blood panel on you. So I have literally given blood already to preparing for Antarctica. And that was interesting because they test for a lot of different things. And if you get a false positive on anything, they make you take another test. So I had to be tested twice, and I hate needles. So that wasn't the most fun part of it. But I think that was mostly it. And just, yeah, the full physical, check your eyesight. I don't have any wisdom teeth. They used to not let you actually go to Antarctica unless you had all of your wisdom teeth out. They've since relaxed that rule a bit, but I don't have any wisdom teeth anyway, so it's not really a problem.
So Robert England on Patreon has a few questions for you. Firstly, how will you decide what type of clothes to pack?
Oh God, so I probably spent a lot of money at REI. This has all been like this preparation. So I don't ski or snowboard, so I don't have any cold weather clothes, so I kind of had to start from zero. So with preparing for Antarctica, well, let me first talk about the weather that I'll be experiencing. So The weather there will be cold, but it won't be as bad as perhaps some of you might be imagining, by which I mean the temperatures when I'm going. So it's going to be the Antarctic summer, and I'm for the most part going to be near sea level. So McMurdo Station, where I'm going to, is at sea level, and then the dry valleys are still pretty close to sea level as well. The dry valleys are where Blood Falls and Lake Hoare are. The temperatures around this time of year are going to vary between 5 degrees Fahrenheit to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's always going to be below freezing, but it's not as bad as it is in other locations in Antarctica. So to get to the clothing part, so you have to have a base layer, then a mid layer, and then your outer layer. So the base layer is long underwear, and actually buying all of this new sort of tech-friendly clothing that like sort of wicks away your sweat, because one of the biggest problems that you have to worry about when you're in Antarctica or when I'm going to be hiking on this glacier is that if you have a bunch of clothing that keeps you warm, but it's not like really great at wicking away the sweat as you're building it up, that sweat will actually start to freeze and you will start to freeze as a result. So all of my clothing now has to be not only really warm, but really smart built-in tech that sort of like keeps the sweat sort of embedded in the clothing and instead of on your skin. So that's the base layer. Then the mid layer is like fleece pants, fleece shirt, and then the outer layer is what I'm going to be getting from the quartermaster in New Zealand. So that's these huge red puffy outerwear layers. And the outerwear layers that they provide you in Christchurch before you go to Antarctica are actually really great and should be really good. But it's been interesting shopping for all of those clothing because when I was shopping at REI, one of the people working there admittedly told me that most of the adventure wear is still highly sexist, that there's a lot of clothing that you can find in the men's section for adventure wear that you can't find in the women's section or is harder to find in the women's section. So one of my base layer pants is actually like pants for dudes. It's got like a little hole in it for dudes to, you know, do their business. It was totally awkward, really comfortable, but so I had to buy some clothing that was technically for dudes, which was silly, but you know, so that's been part of the preparation.
Eric Hawkinson on Patreon asks, what's something you're bringing that no one would think of?
Okay, so things I'm bringing that no one would think of. I would have to say it's a couple of things I'm bringing to Antarctica that no one might think of. So first is I am bringing a swimsuit. That seems counterintuitive going to Antarctica, but supposedly there is a sauna. I don't know if I will be spending any time in the sauna, but you know, I'm bringing that. The other thing is when I arrive in Antarctica, I will be given a female urinary funnel because I'm gonna have to, you know, use the bathroom in the field. And so I've not used actually one of those funnels before. I imagine that'll be a learning experience for me. But that's perhaps something that not everyone thinks of, certainly not guys. I have also been told, you know, so you use that obviously for urination, but I've also been told if you are in the field and for some reason you really have to use like full bathroom, there's a trash bag. So yeah.
Another question from Robert on Patreon is, what projects will you participate in?
What projects I will participate in. So I mentioned a little bit about going to these different areas, Blood Falls, and hiking on this glacier and getting samples from the seafloor sediment and things of that nature. So this is all about doing video microscopy in Antarctica, which should be a lot of fun. So this is right here, a field microscope that I'll be using. I'll see if I can get it set up here. You can sort of see a little bit into it. So this field microscope is going to be coming with me when I'm doing these hikes to check and see if I can find microbial living things in these different locations. And so my project is really actually all about looking at the life that lives beneath the ice in all of these different locations in Antarctica. Because when most people think about Antarctica, they think that it's fairly barren and lifeless except for some penguins. But the reality is that there's all these like microbes, tardigrades, nematodes, you know, little worms and stuff, just everywhere across Antarctica. So actually, Antarctica to me is sort of like a polar Serengeti of life. And my project is all about doing video microscopy. So watching all these little creepy crawlies moving around, and I'm going to be doing a big project and rollout when I come back showing all of these videos and sort of doing an interactive website around that. So all of my work down there is really going to be about getting as many samples as I can, doing as much video work with the microscope, and then piecing that all together. But I will also be trying to do things while I'm there of actually trying to have a GoPro over my shoulder and different things that really bring you along for the ride of the adventure of what it's going to be like in Antarctica, or at least in Antarctica as a newbie, as I will be. Oh, and one thing before Matt jumps in with the next question. If you've got questions that I haven't answered yet, by all means, jump into the live chat. He's monitoring that and we can answer.
So here's a question from the live chat. Naknud said, if you discover something new, never seen before under your microscope, what would you name it?
That's a good question. You know, so preparing for this live stream, actually, I had met up with Simone Yetch. You might know her as like Simone, Queen of Shitty Robots. And she was talking about how I should do some sort of campaign where I name tardigrades after people, like either on my Patreon or something like that. And that was really adorable. I don't know if I'll name the microbes unless I'm working with them for several days at a time, which could happen. But I mean, I don't know. I'm sure while I'm there, every time I've been embedded in a science community, there are so many science puns, which are terrible. I'm not the biggest pun person myself, but I imagine I'll probably be taking in suggestions from the larger science community as to what to call my different nematodes and tardigrades and things of that nature. So not a specific answer just yet, but I'm sure it'll be really dorky.
Butt Hugs on Twitter asks, what is the oxygen like there? Do you have to prep for low levels of oxygen?
So I mentioned earlier, I'll mostly be at sea level, so it won't be as high altitude as it is in some places in Antarctica. So the oxygen there should actually not really be an issue. It's preparing, as I said, for, you know, sweat and that sort of freezing. It's also, you know, sometimes it can get as nice as 25 degrees Fahrenheit, which for some people, not me, but for some people that's like t-shirt weather or something there. The oxygen levels really aren't going to be so much of an issue as just dealing with wind and dealing with cold. I'm not sure what the wind speeds are, but I hear it can get pretty bad. And obviously when there's a storm that rolls through, that's not going to be a whole lot of fun.
Johanna Miranda on the live stream asks, will you be there completely alone? Will others be joining you?
So I am alone in terms of this is my project and I am a team of one. So in terms of making my project successful and making it happen, that's my sole responsibility. Certainly so many people are helping me make this happen, but in terms of like a team and team members, I'm a team of one. But I won't be alone at any point during all of these expeditions while I'm in Antarctica, because I'm going to be sort of embedding in different science teams. So at Blood Falls, I'll be working with Jill McCookie, who's an amazing microbiologist. At Lake Hoare, I'll be working with, I believe, Steve Schmidt's team and Amy, who's there, and they are experts in hiking on a glacier. I've never hiked on a glacier, so they're going to be helping me out with that. The dive team, obviously, I'll be working with. They are diving. I'm not diving, thankfully. That would be freezing. And then the Sea Ice Edge is going to be Brittany Schmidt's team, and they go down there every season for quite a while. So all of these different teams are going to be helping me make my project happen, but ultimately I'm kind of tagging along and being embedded in their teams and sort of following them as they do their work, and then I'll be doing my own work, you know, in the same space as they are. So it's a lot in terms of, yeah, I'm my own team member, but I'll be with people at any point. There's not going to ever be something where I go out hiking completely on my own.
Puzzlehead on Twitter asks, when you were younger, did you ever think this would be in your future?
So I don't think this was ever in my future when I was younger. So I grew up in Kansas, so pretty much everything that I do right now seems to be not what I had imagined for myself. But, you know, I think I probably got the travel bug somewhere along the way. So it would have probably been my goal when I was younger, but maybe not when I was like a little kid. And then in terms of when I got really excited to go to Antarctica, I think it really fed into my love for space exploration. So, you know, several years ago, I stumbled into this job at NASA that I didn't expect to get, and then it's led to this entire career in space exploration that I never really saw coming. And I'm not the biggest like raring to go person to go into space because, well, I get motion sick really easily and there's a lot of other factors to take into consideration. So to me, going to Antarctica sort of became my version of going to space. It's the most extreme place that I would want to go, at least for now, and experience. And there's so many parts of Antarctica that look like Mars or are very space-like in nature in terms of how you have to operate. So Antarctica, I think, really became something that I became obsessed with over the last several years, more so than when I was a little kid.
And a follow-up question from Mad Beardman on Twitter. Can my young daughter go one day?
Yeah, so for going to Antarctica, there's a few different options. So I am going through a National Science Foundation grant through the Antarctic Artists and Writers Program, which is a great program you can consider if you're not a scientist. Also, just looking for opportunities for the U.S. Antarctic program if you live in the United States. That's something you should Google and check out. Other options are if you live in other countries, check out what your Antarctic stations are or what Antarctic stations your country might partner with. So one route essentially to going to Antarctica is going through the government. The other route to go to Antarctica is going essentially as a tourist. And for that, it's very pricey, but if you've got a lot of money, you can take a ship and go down to the edge of Antarctica and sort of see it from the sea. So I think we've probably just got time for one more question. So if we want to do a final question, either from the live chat or from something we've collected, I'll let Matt choose that and we'll do a final question and that'll be all of my stuff about Antarctica.
All right. So I think it's a funny one to finish up. Can you get Netflix there and all the rest of your internet diet of media? And if you can't, whether or not you can, will you watch The Thing to prepare before you go?
Yeah, so people have been telling me and asking me about The Thing, the movie, and I have not seen it. I don't know if it's necessarily my speed. I'm not really a horror, thrill, silly, that sort of movie person, but a lot of people keep recommending it, so maybe I will. In terms of Netflix and internet connectivity, so no, there's no Netflix. It's been described to me going to Antarctica by the people who actually are in charge of the internet there that it's like 800 people are sharing one iPhone. So I've also heard it's very much like dial-up speed. So my internet connection there is going to be really bad. So do not expect any videos from me necessarily while I'm in Antarctica. But you can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Patreon. Those are going to be your two best places because hopefully I can get out at least photos and blog posts. And so that's going to be the best way to follow along on my journey to Antarctica while I'm there. So beyond that, thanks so much for tuning in to my very first live stream. And this was a fun experiment. And hopefully I'll do future live streams when I'm back from Antarctica and we can go through more questions about what it was actually like. But again, just find me on Instagram and Patreon. And otherwise, I will see you all when I get back from Antarctica, which is really exciting.